In the previous video, we created a Cognito pool and we added some functionality to our backend to retrieve the Cognito identity from our context object. Now we will create a web front end to our application, a web client. In this video, we will generate a JavaScript SDK of our service using API Gateway. And then we will use this SDK with a Cognito client in a simple web page. I'm signed in to my AWS Management Console and I have already opened the Amazon Cognito dashboard. So if you go to Services and type in Cognito, this will direct you to this site. Cognito is a web service that allows you to manage or to implement sign up and sign in functionality for your application. And there are two options. You can create your own Cognito pool, or you can use federated identities if you want to allow your users to authenticate, for example, with Facebook or with their Google account. And it also allows unauthenticated identities. Authorization and highly customized pools are a bit out of scope of this tutorial, but I'm going to show you how to use Cognito IDs to identify your users within your Lambda functions. So we will choose the federated identities Cognito approach to create a Cognito pool. Let's click on the Manage Federated Identities button and give our pool a name like log pool. So in this tutorial, I want to use unauthenticated identities because setting up the authentication providers would take too long. So let's enable this button and create a new pool. Let's view our details. And as you can see, what has been created for us is an IAM role that is connected with our Cognito pool. So you can specify what access rights, what access permissions the users get that are identified via Cognito. And you can differentiate between our unauthenticated identities and our authenticated identities. So let's click on Allow. And here you can see now our Cognito pool has been created, and Amazon gives us already some sample data that we can use, some source code like here for JavaScript that we can use to authenticate our users in our client. And it also gives us some sample code for Android, for iOS, and other platforms. We are going to use these code snippets in our next video, but for now let's just add the user identification functionality to our Lambda functions. So let's head back to our editor and let's update our model, because now in our model we also want to identify the users that created and updated articles. So I add a new property, user ID, and I'll add it here to my constructor. And where do we get the user ID from? We get it from Cognito. And for this purpose, we will access an object that we haven't used so far, the context object. So we need to pass that into our function here. So if our Lambda function has been called through a request that is authenticated or that uses a Cognito pool for identification, then the context object will have an identity property with the property Cognito identity ID. We're going to use that here. Then add it to our constructor. And we will do the same with our update article method. Okay, the delete article and read article methods can stay as they are, but here we now need to invoke our create article method differently. We also need to pass in the context. from our Lambda function handler. And the same for our update method. Okay. In the next video, we will deploy our front end to CloudFront and then try out our full stack application. See you there.